Aloha! I'm Mrs. Fisher, and today we're going to be looking at grammar concept number 6, direct addresses, appositives, and we'll do our grammar recap. All right, so what is a direct address? I know I've talked to you about them, and I talked to you about capitalizing them, but today we're going to look a little more in depth so you can understand them. So, direct address, they're set off by commas. A noun of direct address identifies the person to whom the sentence is directed, and it's set off by commas. For example, Robert is a great husband. We're not talking to Robert in that sentence. You can hear that Robert is the subject of the sentence. But if you said, Robert, you are a great husband, now you can hear where you're talking to Robert, so you're directly addressing him. So it's set off by a comma. Here's a little rap with a bunch of direct addresses in it, and these are all of my relatives that I have in here.
Independent elements, direct address. Direct address. Direct addresses directly address the person spoken to. Oh, yeah. In the sentence. They're set apart with commas. 1 or 2. The direct address is the person directly spoken to. Grandpa Fisher, we had fun whitewater rafting with you. Grandma Fisher, thanks for letting us go to the zoo. Grandma said she might buy a canoe. If she does, Grandpa, I hope you don't fall out of that one too. But most importantly, I hope you know we do, Grandma and Grandpa, that we love.
All right, so this is my family here, my husband's side of the family. So this is his father and mother and his grandmother, my son and my daughter when they were younger.
And those 4 examples, Grandpa and Grandma, were the direct addresses. And now that we're back in school, they're the ones we're missing. Direct addresses directly address the person spoken to in the sentence. They're set apart with commas, 1 or 2. The direct address is the person directly spoken to. Hey, where's Grandpa?
All right, that's always such an endearing direct addresses. So direct addresses in the beginning and imperative. If the direct address is in the beginning of the sentence, you put the comma after the direct address. So, Mrs. Fisher, your grammar raps are fun and helpful. Mrs. Fisher's the direct address. It's set off by a comma because you're talking to her. Mrs. Fisher, your grammar raps are fun and helpful. Mrs. Fisher sings grammar raps that are fun and helpful. In that sentence, you can hear that Mrs. Fisher's not directly being spoken to, but about. So that's now she's the subject, not a direct address. So there's no comma. Mrs. Fisher, now here's an imperative, right? Mrs. Fisher, please sing us grammar raps that are fun and helpful. So this really is, Mrs. Fisher, you please sing us grammar raps that are fun and helpful. So both of them have direct addresses when you're directly addressing that person. And you set it apart with a comma. So that's in the beginning of the sentence when they're set apart with a comma. This is what it would look like if it was in the middle of the sentence. The dog might suffocate, Tony, if you do not take the bag off its head. So now you can see with Tony in the middle of the sentence, we had to put a comma on both sides because that's the direct address in the middle of the sentence. Tony, the dog might suffocate if you do not take the bag off its head. So that was in the beginning of the sentence again. So we'll recap. All right. If the direct address is at the end of the sentence, you put a comma before the direct address. Rocco caught the ball, Tony. So here we have in the beginning of the sentence, Tony, Rocco caught the ball. Rocco, catch the ball. That understood you as the subject. Rocco will catch the ball, Tony, if you throw it to him. So notice the direct address being set off by those commas each time and always capitalized. We capitalize the direct address. All right, so let's try these. I've put in yellow the direct address. So how do you punctuate these sentences? 1. The cat caught the mouse, Tony. The second sentence. The UPS truck stopped at our house, Ashley. How do you punctuate what? Number 3. Nikki, Rocco chased the cat around the house. How do you punctuate that? Number 4. Robert chased the kids around the yard. Now that one does not have a direct address. We're talking about Robert, not to Robert. Ashley cooked dinner for her husband Tony. Again, we're talking about Ashley, not to Ashley. So it's not set off. If it was Ashley cooked dinner for Tony, then we'd be talking to her, but it says Ashley cooked dinner for her husband Tony. Nikki, Rocco ate dinner already. Number 7. Donna will do the laundry, Robert, if you throw it downstairs. Number 8. Lance, please take the car to the shop. The brakes don't work. That's not good. All right, so now I did not highlight these so that now you can try doing them on your own without seeing that yellow color. Okay, so even though they don't have color, each one of them does have one direct address. I'll read each one to you and then please punctuate them. Lance, please take the laundry out of the washing machine. Number 2. Nikki, Tony played Call of Duty with your husband. Number 3. Donna will do the dishes, Robert, if you cook dinner. Number 4. The police vehicle stopped at our school, Ashley. Number 5. Nikki, Miss Daisy chased Rocco around the house. Number 6. Robert filled the jacuzzi with fresh water, Lance. Number 7. Ashley called to say she loves us, Robert. Number 8. The car is dented because I hit the stop sign, Tony. Alright, so how did you do? Alright, next we're going to look at appositives. So now you know what a direct address is. Let's see how well you do with appositives. They're very similar. Appositives are nouns that follow a noun or a pronoun and rename or identify that noun or pronoun without a verb. For example, Mrs. Fisher, our English teacher, loves to teach students grammar. So we have Mrs. Fisher's the noun, followed by a noun, our English teacher. And when you have a noun following a noun that renames or identifies it, it's called an appositive. So in this example, Mrs. Fisher, our English teacher, loves to teach students grammar. Our English teacher is the noun that follows Mrs. Fisher and renames her. A trick that I use to remember the word appositive is as follows. I say, are you positive that's Tony? Yes, I'm a positive. That's Tony, my son. Tony is the noun and my son is the appositive renaming or identifying Tony. So here's a little appositive rap, and again it has my family in it.
Christine.
Here we go.
Nouns, appositives. Oh yeah, here we go. An appositive is a noun that follows another noun. It renames or identifies it and may be compound. A mnemonic strategy
and my daughter
is fun is, are you positive that's Tony? I'm positive that's Tony, my son. An appositive
This is my husband.
It's modifier.
This is my daughter and son and me.
We live in
when I was in Desert
US,
Storm.
home of the brave. Here are more appositives to help explain. Bob, Sonia, and Grammy Fisher, my relatives, all play putt-putt in
Notice
the
it's
rain.
renaming them.
Christine, Jenny,
Those are
Stephanie,
my nieces.
Elizabeth, Margaret, and Catherine, my nieces, all live on a farm in Michigan.
My father.
My father, the genius, is wonderful. I love having him around. My mom, my heartstrings, like shopping for antiques downtown. Brandon and Eric, my nephews, have a dog that's really cool. He, their dog, will dive down 9 feet to get a ball out of the pool. Eric, come went to King's Dominion with us. Christine and Jenny, my nieces, sat with Tony and Nikki on the bus. Mandy, my niece, is so beautiful and so kind. As for me, Mrs. Fisher, I think about them all the time. And a positive is a noun that follows another noun. It renames or identifies it and may be compounded. A mnemonic strategy, which is fun, is are you positive that's Tony? I'm a positive, that's Tony. My son, my son, my son, my son. That's Tony.
All right. That was when he graduated from college. All right. So an appositive is a noun that follows another noun. An appositive phrase just has more than one word. An appositive by itself is just one word. A positive phrase is more than one word. No big deal. You don't need to know that. But how to punctuate them is what you do need to know. So Mrs. Fisher, my English teacher, answers my questions with a smile. So Mrs. Fisher's the noun, followed by a noun that's identifying her as my English teacher. There's no verb. If there was the verb is, then it would not be an appositive. So here's appositive phrases. So it's the same kind of rap. It's kind of a neat rap. It's and just listen for those appositive phrases.
Phrases. Appositive phrases. Shh. Did you hear that?
Yes, I do.
I hope Ratuka, our guide, knows what's
Ratuka being renamed as our guide.
Where's the other couple, Jim and Jane?
I overheard them say they were going with Manata, the other guy.
Listen to those appositives.
What was that?
I don't know. It sounded like a lion, a big, ferocious, tourist-eating lion. Hold still. There is a spider, a 5-inch long, hairy-legged, orange and black spider with fangs in your hair. Stop yelling. Ratuka, our guide, keeps staring at us.
An appositive phrase is a noun phrase that follows another noun. It renames or identifies it and may be compound. A mnemonic strategy, which is fun, is are you positive that's Tony? I'm a positive, that's Tony, my son. An appositive with its modifiers is an appositive phrase. We live in the U.S., home of the brave. An appositive phrase is a noun phrase that follows another noun. It renames or identifies it and may be compound. A mnemonic strategy, which is fun, is are you positive that's Tony? I'm a positive, that's Tony, my son. An appositive with its modifiers is an appositive phrase. We live in the U.S., home of the brave. Hey, where's our guide? Ratuka. Ratuka, where's our guide?
Our guide, Ratuka, is over there with the other guide, Manata.
In the story, the first examples were appositive phrases. In the last examples, they were appositives. Can you tell the difference?
All the difference is if it's one word, it's an appositive. More than one word, it's a positive phrase. All right, so let's find the appositives. We're looking for a noun following another noun, renaming or identifying the first noun. I'm a positive, that is Tony, my son. Can you find the appositive? Well, the appositive was my son. Punctuating an appositive is just like punctuating a direct address, but only if the appositive is non-essential. So what we want to think is, if we don't need it, we can scoop it out of the sentence. But if we need that information to know who we're talking about, we have to keep it in the sentence. So that's non-essential means we can scoop it out. Essential means we need to keep it in. So we put commas around something we can scoop out. We don't put commas if it has to be there. So what do I mean we do need it or we do not need to know it? Well, it all depends on the noun or pronoun that the appositive is renaming. Do you need to know the appositive to identify the noun it is renaming? If so, it's essential. Therefore, we do not separate essential appositives with a comma. Commas mean you can skip it out. For example, I have my favorite class, algebra, next period. I did not put a comma here because I could have said I have my favorite class, social studies, music, English, etc. So I did not put a comma because you needed to know which class that was. If you do not need to know the appositive to identify the noun it's renaming, it's a non-essential appositive. Therefore, we can separate the non-essential appositive with commas. Commas mean you can scoop the appositive out and still know who the sentence is referring to. For example, President Obama, my favorite president, is a brilliant speaker. In this case, we do not need to know the appositive, my favorite president, to know who former President Obama is. So we put commas on both sides of the non-essential appositive, both sides of my favorite president, because we can scoop it out because we know who we're talking about. So the most common way that I see the appositive on a state test that you need to know, including College Board SAT, is in the section on identifying correct grammar usage. So what the test makers do is they put the first comma, and then you must recognize that the second comma is missing. So they give you options of which one to pick. So I gave Mrs. Fisher, my favorite teacher, a gift certificate to the mall. I'll see that this first sentence has a comma, but there is no comma all the way over here. So I would say my favorite teacher needs one right here on this side. So I know that's what I'm looking for. So I gave Mrs. Fisher, my favorite teacher, a gift certificate to the mall. When I see this, I breathe a sigh of relief because it is obvious and easy to answer. I see the first comma and recognize where it is, and then I select a choice which puts the second comma. I'm very serious. This same error is on every major test that you will take, grades 6 to 12. And as you remember, I taught grades 7 through 12 for 6 years at a private school teaching grammar, Becca, so I know exactly what they needed to know before they went off to college and before they took their College Board SAT. I actually taught the College Board SAT for those same 6 years as an elective class. So, let's practice punctuating the appositive and the direct addresses. Miss Daisy, our cat, caught the mouse, Tony. In this case, Miss Daisy is being renamed as our cat. Caught the mouse, and we have Tony as the direct address. Do you need to know that she's our cat? No, because this is the proper noun and this is the common noun. So we can put the common noun in commas. Put the common noun in commas. Tony, our cat, Mr. Cuddles, lived 15 years. Now we're talking to Tony. So how do we set Tony apart as the direct address? Our cat is the common noun. Common noun? We don't put common noun. Now we have the proper noun. Proper noun, don't put commas because we need to know who we're talking about. Our cat, Mr. Cuddles. All right. Let's try this one. The UPS driver, Dave, stopped at our house, Ashley. How do we separate our direct address, Ashley, and the UPS driver, Dave, stopped at our house? How do you punctuate that? The UPS driver, Dave. Do we need to know Dave? Could there be more than one UPS driver? Dave, the UPS driver, stopped at our house. Nikki. So now we have the proper noun here, and this is the common noun. We put common nouns in commas. Common nouns go in commas. Nikki, my daughter, put glasses on the cat. Our daughter Nikki keeps putting the cat in the box. Robert, punctuate those two sentences. Nikki, my daughter, do we need to know? This is the common noun. What did I say? Common nouns go in commas. Our daughter, Nikki, proper nouns don't put commas. Keeps putting the cat in the box. Robert, but what do we do with the direct address? Ashley, my daughter-in-law, cooked dinner for Tony, my son. Ashley's the proper noun. This is the common noun. My daughter-in-law, Ashley, proper noun, what did I say to do? Cooked dinner for my son, Tony. So for Tony, my son. All right, some more. My husband, Robert, chased the kids around the yard. What do you do with this noun that follows noun? Is the appositive proper or common? My dog, Rocco, chased the cat around the house. Is this proper or common? Robert, don't bother. Donna, our maid, will do the laundry. How do you punctuate that sentence? Our maid is common. Lance, please park our vehicle, the yellow Jeep, in the garage. Now, in this case, we may have more than one vehicle, so there's no proper common going on here. But do we need to know which Jeep to park it in the garage? If I have 3 vehicles, you do. So what do you do if you need to know this information? Robert, my best friend and husband, is very patient. Robert's proper. You don't need this information, so how do you punctuate it? All right, so that ends today's lesson. Great job. And now we are going to recap some of the things that we've learned so far this year. We learned time to show what you know. We capitalize proper nouns, but not common nouns. Brand names, but not common names. Titles when they come before a person's name, but not alone in place of a name. We capitalize direct addresses. We learned that today. The first word in every sentence and the first word in every line of poetry. We capitalize races, nationalities, states, countries, regions, religions, streets, cities, highways, bodies of water, mountains, proper noun, abbreviations, specific courses, languages. We capitalize the days of the week, months of the year, and special calendar events, but we do not capitalize seasons like fall, spring, winter, and summer. We also know that when we are summarizing, paraphrasing, and quoting, we must include the author and the page number. In our in-text citation, we should always have a signal phrase like in accordance with or according to. Whether we're quoting, paraphrasing, or summarizing, we use those signal phrases and we put our author and our page numbers. But when we are asked to use evidence on our Smarter Balanced assessment, we always use direct quoted evidence unless they ask us to paraphrase or summarize, in which case they're testing to see if we know that when we paraphrase and summarize, we put it in our own words and in our own style. So those are not quoted word for word from the text. We also learned that when we proofread, it is very, very important for us to check our punctuation, our grammar, our spelling, and make sure we don't have any sentence fragments or run-on sentences. We learned that we capitalize the beginning of every sentence and that adjectives come before the words they modify, adverbs come before or after the words they modify, and we learned all about how to punctuate dialogue. And we know that when we're doing dialogue, we change lines every time the speaker changes and indent. That we put what the speaker says in quotes and that we have a tagline that comes before or after what was quoted. And if it comes after, we put a comma after the tagline. If the tagline comes at the end of the sentence and it has a question or an exclamation or period. If it's a period, it becomes a comma. Otherwise, here's a comma. Otherwise, it is, you always put the exclamation or the question mark. And when it came to finding our subject-verb agreements, we remember a man's handsome, almost, any, none, and some. The contents of the sentence tell us if it refers to several or to one. So when we have that almost any, none, and some, we look at the object of the preposition to decide if it's singular or plural for subject-verb agreement. And then if we have these following pronouns, they're always singular. Each, either, neither, one, everyone, everybody, no one, nobody, anyone, anybody, someone, somebody. And we do remember that they, them, and their can now be singular or plural. And for today, we learned that all direct addresses are set apart with a comma, and direct addresses are always capitalized. The direct address is who you're directly addressing. An appositive is a noun that follows another noun and renames or identifies the first noun. There's no verb between it. A non-essential appositive is set off with commas because it can be scooped out of the sentence. You don't need to know it to know who you're referring to. Essential appositives have no commas because you need to know who or what the appositive is to identify the first noun. So in this case, this is a non-essential. Tony, comma, my son is the light of my life. Essential, my daughter, Nikki, because I could have more than one daughter, right, is my heartbeat. You are now done and done. Congratulations. And I look forward to seeing you on our next grammar lesson. Have a great day.